Straight to business. Charles is here. Starting with a look at the markets because, of course, in the light of US and Iran trading military strikes once again, Charles.
Those strikes underlining really the fragility of that ceasefire announced in April and the risk of seeing this war drag on for longer than expected with its continued impact on global energy supplies, oil prices rising as a result, especially with Iran declaring the Strait of Hormuz fully closed and vowing to target any ships that are trying to go through, but perhaps not climbing as high as one might expect, with the U.S. military saying commercial ships are actually continuing to transit in and out. Donald Trump saying yesterday they secretly helped move 100 million barrels of crude through the strait over the course of the past month or so. On Tuesday, though, only 4 commercial vessels seen crossing the strait, all linked to Iran, with no crossings seen on Wednesday morning. This according to ship tracking data seen by Bloomberg.
So how are stocks trading today then?
Well, we're seeing a mixed picture in the major Asian bourses. The Kospi index in South Korea higher, but it has had a volatile session, taking a step back, though. It has lost roughly 9% over the past 2 weeks. The war in the Middle East and its global impact are concerned, especially with U.S. inflation reaching a 3-year high in May and expectations that the U.S. Federal Reserve will have to raise interest rates. And we're seeing a similar story at the open in Europe as well, with the European Central Bank also expected to announce a rate hike during its meeting later this Thursday.
Let's move on to the World Cup. Biggest, of course, sporting event in the world, and outsized as well economic impact.
In this 2026 edition, to be held in 3 host countries, the U.S., Mexico, and Canada, going to reach new financial highs, especially as the tournament's been upsized. 48 qualified teams, 104 matches, 16 host cities. FIFA expects all of this to generate just under $41 billion in economic output globally, with the creation of 824,000 jobs, whether directly or indirectly linked to the competition. 6.5 million fans expected in the stadia, and about 6 billion in front of their screens.
Does it actually translate, though, into benefits for the host countries, Charles?
This is mostly via their tourism and travel sectors, hotels, restaurants, airlines, shops, that kind of thing. The U.S. expected to see added output worth $17 billion, which is actually less than 0.1% of its annual GDP. The impact on Mexico's economy will be larger, even if it is hosting fewer games, with 0.2 to 0.5% of its annual GDP expected to be created. Although there are reasons to nuance these economic forecasts on account of travel difficulties because of the U.S.'s restrictive visa practices, and also lower demand on account of the high cost of the match-going experience, as we spoke about yesterday. Another factor to take into account is that historically big sporting events tend to always go over budget and costing more to the tax-paying base. So the real winner here is FIFA. They're expecting to generate revenue of around $11 billion in TV rights, hospitality and ticketing and marketing rights. That's more than the $7.5 billion generated in 2022 in Qatar, and more than twice what they made in Russia in 2018.
Wow, staggering figures, isn't it? SpaceX next. It's to launch a record-breaking IPO on Friday.
Yeah, it's the company's rocket launches that are concerning critics in its home state of Texas, though. The U.S. government set to give SpaceX some 280 hectares of land that are currently part of a wildlife refuge near its Starbase facility in South Texas, in exchange for land the company owns farther north. Now, environmental groups are suing to stop this swap, saying Starbase's expansion threatens both biodiversity and local communities' beach access. Brian Quinn has the story.
On the southeast corner of Texas, near the Mexican border, migratory birds wade in the tidal waters of the lower Rio Grande Valley National Wildlife Refuge. Next door is Starbase. As SpaceX prepares for an influx of investor cash with its June 12th IPO, its launch facility is preparing to expand, but it needs room to grow. In 2025, the Trump administration's U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service began considering a land swap that would give SpaceX more than 280 hectares of the wildlife refuge next to Starbase in exchange for a similarly sized plot of land owned by the company further north. The deal was approved this month. Environmental groups are now suing to block it.
Wildlife habitat is meant to be preserved for future generations. SpaceX getting more money means the rocket facility getting larger, creating more damages to poor people's homes, dumping more pollution into the environment, onto our beach.
Starbase and its rapid expansion have been controversial in the area ever since SpaceX first broke ground there more than a decade ago, with local communities complaining of lost access to beaches and environmental damage from exploding rockets. In addition to potential loss of habitat for endangered species, the land swap could also threaten U.S. historical heritage, as it includes the site of the last land battle of the Civil War. SpaceX has declined to comment on the lawsuit. The Fish and Wildlife Service, though, says the swap will add to a different refuge further up the coast, bringing a net conservation benefit.
Shop Pellegrin with Business, thanks very much. Straight to